Hello, is this thing on? Okay, good. I am sorry to interrupt your listening pleasure, but my name is Tiffany, and I'm here to tell you about my podcast, True Crime Connections. It's an advocacy podcast that talks with real survivors about real shit. This is the place you want to be if you've been in a toxic relationship or anything tragic has happened to you and you're looking to find your strength and healing. No two episodes are alike, but they all give you useful tools that you can take with you. So make sure to find me on your favorite podcast platform, or you can go to truecrimeconnections.com and come join the hope building community. See you there.
Darkcast Network, bringing our indie podcasts out of the shadows. Hey up, witches and beautiful souls. Welcome to another episode of the Bell Witch Podcast. With me, Swales, the friendly green witch, to help you get witching in the 21st century. This is episode 57, and we've had a couple of bonus episodes to do with the old Beltane Fire Festival. Thank you very much to my recent flurry of subscribers joining my Patreon, of which I am going to shout out now. Jesse De Jong, I don't know if I've said that already actually. AJ came back as a member, thank you so much for coming back. Wendy Wolf, Amy Warrington, Tomo Yoshimura, oh my god. I'm rubbish at this, reading out names. Emmeline, Kitty Diggins, and yeah, I think that's everybody. I'm sorry if I have probably butchered your name because this is definitely a weakness of mine. Thank you so much for coming along and joining this podcast Patreon. And I do encourage you to comment in the little box on Spotify. It's a brand new offering where you can comment on the episode, and I think that helps it in the old landscape of podcasts. So if you have got time while you listen, please pop a little bit of feedback or a little cheeky review or rating on Spotify or Apple. That'd be great. In other news, you may have noticed on my Instagram I got a new snake. Yeah, I went to Knaresborough to the amazing little K Rescue Centre, which is a reptile and exotic rescue centre on the high street. It's absolutely packed full of all kinds of weird and wonderful animals, from scorpions, snakes, turtles, there's some skunks in there's a parrot, there's big ass fish, lizards of all kinds. It's amazing, and they're so friendly, and they'll let you walk in and have a look and have a cuddle of snakes and lizards. The volunteers there are really high qualified in terms of knowing stuff about reptiles, the history of the reptile you're looking at. It was a lovely day out, and I went on Good Friday with a friend, Annabelle, and we had a look around the shop, and it was heaving because it was the holidays, and they had a few rabbits that were getting adopted on Good Friday, which was quite fun. I got shown an assortment of royal pythons, all absolutely beautiful. It was so hard to choose the one I wanted. I ended up going with a little baby royal python who's like a banana albino type. She's so lovely, really bright yellow, will look beautiful in pictures. Just before I collected her, I went into the Crystal Buddha, which is just down the road from the rescue, which is an amazing crystal shop, and they helped me choose the name just by geeking out about snakes and crystals. Therefore, I am going to call her... Oh, drum roll, please. Citrine. because she's yellow and sunny, you see. Citrine and Pebbles, Pebbles and Citrine. She is quite nervous. She hides a lot. She avoids me. When I get her out, she's all right, but she doesn't like me going in for her. So she needs a little bit of TLC, but she's just so cute and so diddy. I've not attempted to feed her yet. I shall let you all know how that goes. But I'm so happy to have two snakes again because never in my life have I had just one snake. I've always had a minimum of two and a maximum of four, which was quite a lot of snakes for me. And I just felt like something were missing. And it's been a while since my lovely little Heidi Snakey shuffled off her mortal coil. And so it felt like the right time. I'm also going to take it as a hint to cover Knaresborough and the amazing witch, my favourite witch, that is Mother Shipton and Mother Shipton's Cave. So that'll be the next Solitary Witch episode. And I've said it now, so it's got to happen. It would have happened this week, but I'm still chasing my tail from the Easter holidays with the kids. And also there was loads of episodes to record for Beltane with an annoying crashing computer that keeps having a hissy fit every time I try and upload the latest episode. So today then, what have I got for you today, dear witch? Well, this is a lovely mootaloot with a creative witch named China. This one took a bit of pinning down because it turns out that China was quite nervous and had never done anything like this before. She's recently started up a little Instagram and Etsy shop and is creating these wonderful pieces that are runic and actually really quite powerful, and I'm so drawn to them. I discovered her, like I discover lots of my Mootaloot guests, surfing the waves on Instagram, and immediately knew that I needed to get her on the podcast to talk about the magic of creating runes as a witch and as a little independent business. I shall link China's Instagram in the show notes below. Please do follow her. It's a tiny little Instagram. Definitely needs some more numbers to grow in there. So I highly recommend you go and have a look at her offerings. They are really beautiful. Enjoy this Mootaloot interview, and I shall speak to you in a couple of weeks for the next Solitary Witch episode all about Mother Shipton and her amazing magic waterfall. Hello and welcome, China, to my little witchy podcast. Thank you so much for coming on. I'm really excited to talk about runes because I know nothing about runes. And I've been looking for a witch to talk to me about creating magical goods as a business, and the process of that.
Oh, I don't even know how to explain how it began. I guess it was a hobby that everyone kept saying, you should make an Etsy. And I thought, well, you know what? I was on maternity leave. I suppose, looking for something. I felt that I had a lot of time to myself. So I just thought, well, if I could find a way to share what I love doing with other people, then I'd give it a go. And it kicked off a lot better than I thought. I don't make millions. I don't think any of us do. But it's there, and I find that the most important thing.
I've had a little nosy at your Etsy. It's very lovely. And it's a family-run business, it says. So I presume you
Yeah.
were kind of like more into it then.
Well, it's more me and my husband. I say me
Oh.
and my husband. I don't like to always say me, me, me. It's mainly me saying, look at this I made, and him being like, that's really good. And he has loads of ideas, but he doesn't have as much time as me. He used to do some of the burning because it was something that used to stress me out, but I felt really bad. He would come home from work and I would be like, yeah, this needs to be done in 3 days' time. And now I do all the wood burning myself. And he's like, oh, well, that was my only job. I mean, I found it quite easy to pick up. It's something that, I mean, I'm a tattoo artist, so it was quite easy, I suppose. It was a bit complex at first because it was a bit reverse to what I knew, but once I kind of knew the technique, I can't do as intricate stuff as him. He can do like all these curves and circles, and that's something I'm like, if it's a straight line, it's okay.
So tell me, what's a rune then? What would you describe a rune as?
I mean, that is probably the most simple yet complex question you could
Yeah.
ask. Of course, it's a form of writing, but aside that, there is a magical aspect to them. They're a way of telling the future. They're a way of providing protection. And over the years, there's been a lot of documents that we can look into which provide us a good context of what way this magic was practiced. It's a writing system that was used in a magical practice. The word rune itself has several meanings, and they all link to the word mystery or secret. And I suppose in today's age, they are very much still that. It's something that not a lot of people know a lot about. And I mean, I find you can spend your life researching, and even I find myself in a little rabbit hole of, oh, I thought I knew a lot. And then you realise you don't. There's so many different types of runes, but as we know, the main one is the Futhark, and that's, I suppose, what you would call your generic lettering. And from those letterings, people can create bind runes, sigils, incantations.
I love sigils. I was going to ask you about that. Like, runes and sigils are very similar. I don't know if they're the same. They've got a kind of like a regimented meaning and history, whereas sigils are just so like created individually.
Yeah, I suppose so. So you can get obviously a rune on its own, which is just a rune on its own. You can then combine them. You can create a bind rune. I have a dog that keeps getting caught up in this charger. Out of all the things, not move back.
Oh. Let's have a look at dog then.
Nala, come here.
Say hi to the doggo. Ah, so gorgeous. I want a dog.
So yeah, I mean, sigils are, I suppose, a combination of different types of runes to create a larger meaning. A lot of sigils look, I suppose, more complex because people don't see the runes they recognize and don't realize that they're not runes. Because, like, coming back to what we said with the generic Futhark, which is your standard, people know that they have a letter and they have a little meaning, but those are, I suppose, what we would call the runes that were given to humans. There are different realms, and each realm has their own set of runes. So you have, say, elven runes, you have dwarven runes, you have giant runes. A lot of things that if we go too into it becomes super complex. I don't want to end up giving you too much information and turning it to a completely different topic.
I really like your work. I think I discovered you via Instagram, just
Mm-hmm.
searching for witchy creatives, because you are a witch, aren't you? Would you consider yourself a witch?
Yes. Yeah, I would. Yeah, I mean, I like to take all aspects and put it into one, as I think it should be. Yeah, and that's fine. There's some people that they like to be more herbology, they like to do more herbal stuff, or some people like to do crystals, whereas I've kind of found a way to link all of them together. I find that, say, some gods have some runes, and those gods will also be represented by herbs and by crystals. So to be able to kind of, I suppose, link runology into witchcraft has been something I suppose I spent my whole life doing. If I wanted to do an offering for, say, Freya, we can get some runes which would represent her, or make a bind rune. I like to make, say, bind runes for gods. I like to translate their name back into runes and then put that on, say, a bind rune or a sigil, and then some runes that might link into them. And then I would like to also get some crystals which they would be associated with. So with Freya, it would be a lot like amethyst and amber. And then to link in the herbs which would go really well as an offering, so things like brambles and berries and chamomile and lavender. And then, yeah, I suppose combined it all together. Everything I do, it's just in my brain. It kind of just goes in a flow of, oh, I'll get this and oh, I'll get that. Anytime we do any sort of, say, offering, you'll just see me for like 30 minutes to an hour beforehand of, oh, and this as well. And oh, this will be really nice. And then it just kind of goes on until I think, okay, I think that's everything I need.
The stuff you create then, the runes that you put on them, they help the function of the item.
I suppose it depends on the item, but yeah, it will help, say, invoke what it is. So, say if it's an item for Freya, it will help invoke and hopefully connect people and get the results that they want. Yeah, I have a lot of stuff which people can choose what it is that they want, and then I can offer a bind rune to help with what it is they're trying to invoke and their intention behind that.
I love that you do the skulls. They're so gorgeous.
Yeah, I've got a couple here that I haven't listed yet. Everything I make with such love that there's a part of me that I'm like, oh, I'm gonna miss that. But I love that it is going to its new home and hopefully providing them with what it is that they need. You know, I like to know that there's just little whispers of the gods just being spread throughout the world,
Oh,
just by a little tiny Etsy shop.
what do you call the wafters?
The feather smudges.
Is that what they're called? Because I was trying to discuss it with a friend the other day. She was going, you know, them things with feathers. And I was a bit like, I don't know what they're called, actually.
It's just a smudge stick.
Because I thought the smudge sticks was what you burned, like the herbs.
So
I'm
you just
sure there's a word.
there is. I mean, I've always known them to be feather smudges. It depends on what culture you're looking at. Some people will call them a spirit stick, and I'm sure there'll be countless of names, but we're all talking about the same thing. That's all that matters.
So the actual process of doing your runes on your items, that must be magic in itself. Have you got a process of like circle setting or?
I like to just, I suppose, I do it because I've got a 1 year old. So it's not a great time to do it when she's around because she loves to help. But she's also a good tester because she likes to shake them after. And if they can survive a 1 year old, I like to think they're pretty sturdy. My main thing is I love my rabbit pelts. As you can probably see, I've got quite a few of them. So I like to kind of set, I've got a nice altar spread, and then I put the rabbit skin, and then I choose the feathers, which takes me much longer than it probably should because I like to try and get things really symmetrical, and I'm trying to find symmetrical feathers on something that isn't very symmetrical. I like to do it with silence on my own, kind of use it as like a meditation practice. I find a lot of peace in doing it, you know, and the intention of the I set in knowing that I'm providing something which is going to help someone else. Yeah, and I find that important to have that in mind, that I am providing people with the tools that they require to do whatever it is that they do.
And do you know exactly what you're going to put on it, or is it kind of like it just flows?
Sometimes, say with the feathers, a lot of them obviously people order them and then I make them to order. And there's sometimes I'll be like, is there a certain rune? And they will say, no, that's absolutely fine. I'll let you choose. And I just feel a connection. I'll just look at a rune and I'll be like, this is the rune that needs to go on that. And sometimes I'll get a message and be like, that was a very fitting rune. That was exactly what I needed. I just go with the feel, and I just trust that feeling that it kind of sticks out. You have these pile of runes and there'll just be one and you think, that's the one. I don't know why, but they'll know why because it's not for me.
That's magic, isn't it?
Yeah, well, I do. I kind of trust that magic process. If I will sit there and I'll think of the customer that I'm making it for, and it just sticks out. And I think, well, this is the one. I'm not sure why, but this is the one.
Did you paint them on, do you? Oh, no, you burn them, don't you?
I suppose it depends on what items. I got some stuff that I burn, some stuff I paint, and then some stuff will have beads on.
What would you say is your favourite rune, if you have any? Is that a hard question?
I'm gonna go with Yera or Jera because obviously we're in Iceland. They don't have a Y. A Y is technically a J, and I'd say I'm more connected to that rune because it was the first rune that was presented to me. It was the most bizarre thing that had ever happened. It was about 8 years ago now. And obviously, the more that I'm going into learning and the more I'm turning it into, I suppose, a lifestyle of this isn't just a hobby. This is what I believe. This is what I practice and it's what I do. And I remember I was with my mum and I was with my niece who was around 3 or 4 at the time. And I go in my pocket and I find this rune. And I'm like talking to my niece and I'm like, have you put this in my pocket? And she goes, no. And I'm like, no, you're not in trouble. Did you put this in? And she's like, no. I asked my mum and she goes, no. And I thought, well, the only person I know with not only a set of runes, but with this set of runes is me. So I get home and I search my runes and it's not from my set. And to this day, I have absolutely no clue where this rune came from. And I have never
Oh.
found it as any of my missing sets.
Oh my gosh. That's like
So
a
it's
glitch
just
in the
always,
matrix.
I know, and I have no idea. And I had it on a necklace for years. And one day I was on the Isle of Wight and I got really upset when I noticed when I got home that my necklace must have broke. I was a bit sad that I lost it, but then I realized that that rune had provided me with the power that I needed and it was off to find someone else. So I would hope that someone was going for a walk, found it, picked it up. It then became their rune. And I like to think that it's just continued doing that over the last few years.
You mentioned you were a tattoo artist. Do you
Yes,
tattoo runes on people, on yourself?
that is, well, a lot on myself and on my partner. You should see the state of him.
Just covered.
And I mean, he is covered. He's probably got about 80% of his face and head done.
Oh,
All
that's
rune
awesome.
work. He's like a grimoire, just walking, which is fantastic. Because if you don't understand runes, he just looks like this runestone work of art. But then we go to places like Glastonbury, and they're like, "I can read your head," and he's like, "Oh, thanks."
I want to know what his head says now.
Most of it's pretty fitting, apart from he does have on the back of his neck it says "Get effed." So there's a few times people will be like, "I can read the back of your neck," and he's like, "Oh," and they're like very funny.
Have you got any on you?
I say I spend all my time tattooing people that I don't end up getting many myself. And because I know what I want, I've kind of just waited to get what I want. Otherwise, I'm just going to end up with stuff for the sake of getting it. But there's an artist side of me. I have to explain to him I don't want to end up like a drawing pad.
Just doodles.
I'll just end up with doodles everywhere.
Gosh, if I were a tattoo artist, I would so do that. I'd always be doodling on myself. I grew up with runestones. My mum had the basic in a red pouch,
Yeah.
clay. Pick them out, don't you? And that's all I really know about how to use them because that's what she used to do. But I mean, how many is this? It's 28 or something.
I suppose it depends on the set. You've either got like a 24, I believe it's a 24, or you've got a 16.
Yes, it's like remembering everything that one little runestone means. And my memory is not the greatest, and I could never do that.
I know. I mean, I can agree with you. I'm there, like, just give me 2 seconds to go through all of my little journals of scribbles. Got
Book of
more
Shadows.
information than I can remember the names of. But yeah, that's why. I mean, I've got loads of leather books up here that we'd just like to go through, depending on what it is we need. But yeah, I suppose the main thing that people know runes for is you can use them, I suppose, like tarot cards. You can pull 3 out, 7 out, however many out, and read them. And then, as people do with tarots, link into what they're trying to either tell you or what it is that's trying to connect to you. I mean, back to the question of what are runes? Runes would not only be an alphabet used as a writing system, but a tool used in magical practice. The word rune has several meanings throughout Iceland, Germanic, and Scandinavian languages, and its main root is mystery or secret. And even after all the records and hidden lost texts found, I find, and a lot of us probably do find, that they do remain a secret. Some people, they dedicate their life to gain the true knowledge and understanding of the secrets, but I personally think that there is only so much that our human selves can learn on this plane. And that comes back to the fact that magic was removed from us centuries ago. Humans became greedy and they abused the gifts that the gods gave us, and in turn they turned it back into a hidden knowledge. That's why I suppose in today's age you'll get people that are born with natural gifts and natural abilities that others don't have. They still have this spark left of a magic we once possessed, and some people find themselves connected to it and some people find themselves drawn to it. And a lot of us spend our time practicing it, whether you want to call it witchcraft, Wiccan, light magic, whatever. It's all the same thing. It all stems from the same link. There are clear records and magical beliefs of this practice, and they give us a good context of in the way this magic was practiced. You can find a lot of this in things like the Poetic Edda or the Havamal. And this kind of explains how not only the runes, but the magic that the runes possessed were used, and how they were an incantational formula that was used to chant, sing, or to carve. And we can find a good link to that in the Havamal, which you've got stanza 144, which explains, do you know how to write? Do you know how to read? Do you know how to paint, prove, ask, offer, sacrifice, send, and to immolate? And I just find that really important to myself, my own practice, and for what it is I do. I love to be able to share knowledge, but in a respectful way. There are some things, as you know, we can't just send certain energies to people that don't understand them, because that's how people end up abusing or sending it in the wrong way. Which is why a lot of my stuff, I tried to keep not only generic, but with a slight more complex and advanced base level. Like we said, I know you can go on the internet and you can find things like bind runes. Of course, they're there with the explanation, but some of them can be slightly incorrect, or people don't know how to use them correctly because the bind rune wasn't created either for them or by them. So they don't actually know the true intention behind it. Bind runes were a way of keeping something hidden. So you'll see a bind rune somewhere and you wouldn't know what it meant, but it was probably a little protection sigil. But it was in a hidden text, so people couldn't just understand what it was.
That's like in the realms of higher magic, isn't it? Like all the secretive.
It is very much secretive.
It's funny. I've recently recorded a solitary witch episode about my sigils and how I do them and stuff. And I did a tiny little bit of history research. I mean, it's massive, isn't it? I mean, you could have loads of episodes about the history of it all. But I stumbled across the Bluetooth logo, which is, do you know about that? It's, how cool is that? It's like a combination of the initials of this king.
People forget that they had a sense of humor then as to they do now. So not everything is of magical, like you'll find runestones and it will be like so and so was here, just like graffiti.
Yeah.
Because obviously where it was a writing context, not everything we see is actually, you'll find some things and it's just a joke. There'll be like banter going on in runes, on runestones, where someone's got an issue with someone else and they're just like writing lies about each other on these stones, hoping other people come across them.
Medieval text messaging. I won a sword, a replica of the Bergenot sword. And it's got runes on it.
Oh, yeah.
I know, I won this from Witchfest. But when I looked into the history of this sword, it is just like A, B, C, D, E, F, G on it. And people are thinking, oh, it's magical and mystical and deep and meaningful. And I think it was just some dude trying to learn how to make a sword and was practicing, the runes. So it was just like, B.
Well, there's a lot of stuff like that, which obviously links back to what I was saying with the Etsy. It's why I like to try and provide a more advanced base level, so people don't just have A, B, C, D, E, F, G. So they have something that's not only more personalized to them, but has more power behind it, hopefully being able to invoke what it is that they're trying to do or connect to, whatever deity it is that they're trying to connect to.
All about intentions.
Yeah.
Have you read the Poetic Edda?
Yeah, I've got, I think, 3 copies of it.
Have you? I'm well impressed.
Yeah. I mean, to be honest, the one I would recommend anyone to get would be Jackson Crawford's. I find him fantastic. He's a really great insight into not only the translation of these texts, but with pronunciation as well. And I find him to be not only, well, such a good source, that's because he is completely atheist. He has no religion. He is a professor in runology. He will acknowledge that there was a magical belief behind it, but he is very much professor. This is the old text, and this is it translated, and this is it translated again in a modern context for us to understand. Anytime I think, because he does a whole verse of the Havamal, and every time I kind of think of the Havamal, I hear it in his voice. I just trust him. I just trust that because he's got no opinion, he's got no biased belief. You know, you got some people in runology and they're, say, more drawn to giant magic or dwarven magic, and they'll then slander the Asir or the Vanir. So it's really nice to get just a neutral, I am a professor, this is my lecture on the Poetic Edda.
So Yorkshire, Edda.
Edda, Edda.
It's like scone, scone, scone. I did buy a copy and I attempted to read it, and it must have not been a very good one because it was like, there's no way I can get through this book.
In our house, it's something we have it on because Jackson Crawford also has it on Audible. So it's just something that, you know, we'll just play in the background. And obviously, listening to it enough times, you do end up remembering things. You know, if we go to Glastonbury, we'll end up listening to it on the way up there.
Could you explain what it is?
Written stories and folklore, which were written down on runestone, which through the years have been uncovered and put together in a more understanding way. You know, a lot of these stories were broken up because where they were found on obviously runestones and in buildings, there was no, this is chapter 1 and this is chapter 2. So this book kind of put it in more of a chronological order, which was able to be understand if it was read as a story and a book. Otherwise, you're just trying to figure out what's going on. I like the story of the gifts that were given to the gods. And you'll find a lot of gifts that were given to the gods were always through Loki being mischievous. He had a great tendency to do things that he thought would be really funny, get himself in trouble, try and rectify what he had done, and then people ended up with gifts from it. One of them being when Loki was like, yeah, we can get this giant to build the wall around Asgard. So to make sure that the giant lost his bet, Loki, being a shapeshifter, transformed himself into a horse. This giant had a horse helping him lug all of these stones, and he mated with this horse so that they could win the bet. And then they ended up with Sleipnir, which is Odin's greatest steed.
Is it heathenry and druic?
It depends, because obviously you've got different types of Eddas or Eddas, whatever it is you want to call them. I'd say the poetic is more of stories of the gods and of the magic. You've got some of these, they're like lore texts from Viking ages. And you're just reading the lore and what happened on this day with this guy.
The newspaper.
Pretty much it is. I've got one of them. I can't remember which one it is. I've got this thick book and it's pretty much just a newspaper.
Yeah, again, I'm forgetting that it's not all magic and spells and witchcraft. It is just how people communicated with each other, and because the belief set was all very mystical because science was not around, you know, that's why I keep going, oh yeah, it's magical. Oh no, it's not. But it can be.
Yeah, it's always great to have the history and the knowledge. and then also understanding the magical side. Yeah, runes have a large history. There's one concept which a lot of people that are either new to it aren't very aware, and that's that even though Odin gave the runes to, say, mankind, Odin did not create the runes. The runes existed before him because Odin was never a god. He was actually a man who spent his life through sacrifice and on this personal journey he was on to gain knowledge. And that knowledge was the knowledge of runes. He then shared that with the gods. He then shared that with the humans. But they're from a primordial time. They existed before us, before Odin. They're an energy that just existed, and people are able to understand and harness and conjure in the way that they want to.
Have you got any books you could recommend for all this that you always go back to?
I've got some which I'm trying to think of some good basic ones. You've got stuff which I'd say this one. I've got a lot of advanced now, which is all like limited edition, super rare, can't come across it, have to know a guy that knows a guy. I'd say a good start when you get past all your introduction books or your standard fufark, what they mean, what letter they represent. But then I suppose when you want to get more into the magic behind runes, I find the Galdrar book a really good book. It's a book of Icelandic magic, and it's a grimoire which has been turned into. It's not a very big book, but it is very authentic, I suppose, in its layout. It's got a lot of stuff which has been found, but of actual sigils and bind runes and more than just your generic, oh, this is runes and this is the alphabet. So I do find the Galdrar book a really good book for people that just want to look into something a little bit more complex. And this book I find fantastic, actually. If you want to do old school and you want to do it traditionally, it will tell you that you need like a foot of a sparrow and you need to boil it into a broth, and you put that in a bag, and then you put this rune with this little broth bag and you put it under someone's pillow if you don't like them.
There's something about inks as well. I can remember reading somewhere that runes traditionally were in red ink, or is that just a myth?
To be honest, I think it's probably because it's the most overpowering colour. If we're talking from an artist sense, red will stain and it will stay for a long time. If you're staining stone with red, that's going to last long term a lot more. But then the magical side behind that is most runes you would say paint or blot them in blood to activate them. So this would either be mimicked by paint or maybe it is actually someone's blood. We don't know.
Getting a bit dark there.
It can get a bit tough. But yeah, that's something that me and my partner talk about quite often to people. When you talk about, say, a blood sacrifice, people think, oh my goodness, like I'm going to have to gash my arm open. We're talking about like a pinprick. But that just depends on your practice. We live in a day of age. We don't need to bloody do sacrifices and blood everything. But there are, so depending on what you want to do, that is possible, but you don't have to cause yourself horrific injuries. Just a little, I find a nice thing is a little sewing needle and just a little pinprick, as if you're diabetic and you're just taking a blood reading. Or alternatively, there are ways you can make magical inks, which is something obviously used in more than just runic magic. That's something that can be found through any sort of witchcraft practice. And these inks you would use to activate a rune. And that's another good one. There are multiple ways to make inks. You can make them from berries and whatnot. I got a good book on things like that, actually. And it's nothing to do with runes. It is just the complete book of incense, oils, and brews. And there is a section in here on how to make inks. And it's very simple. It's just nice to know that, you can just simply have a little book and it will just tell you how to make some inks. But I mean, as we know, the more depth you put into it with these little things, you can obviously make it more powerful. But the intention is the main thing. You don't need to go out and make an ink or do a blood sacrifice. You can draw it in pencil if that's all you can offer. It's about what you can offer and the intention behind that. I find the big thing is what you can offer. If you don't have a lot to offer, that's the whole point of an offering, is to offer what you're able to give. You don't need to go out and spend money to go buy new things because you think that it will increase its chances of succeeding in trying to conjure whatever it is you're trying to do. As we know, if your intention is set, do it with a crayon if you have to, if that's all you have. If you're setting a space and you're taking that time and you're creating the energies that you want, then that's the most important thing.
Yeah, I've never worked with my own blood, and I mean to, and I just never get round to it. Do you use that? And if you do you find it helps the magic? Is it more powerful?
I do, but that's only because it links more into my journey. I find it more spiritual, but that's just me personally. That's what we work with. It's not that everyone has to do it for it to work. I don't use it all the time, but there are some things, like for example, there is a ritual that you're supposed to do with obviously your Mjolnir, which is Thor's hammer. You'll see obviously people wearing them. There is actually a ritual you're supposed to do. You're supposed to do this ritual and blood it with your own blood to then link it to you to make it yours.
That's like a historical ritual.
Yeah, I suppose so. And it's just a way to, I suppose, to bind yourself physically and spiritually to something and increase its power, and then it makes it yours. And that also links into it. It's so no one can take it off you. If anyone was to take it, it's sealed with your blood. It belongs to you.
I always get a bit twitchy with my hair, when you brush your hair from the brush. I'm a bit like, as a witch, I'm really aware of where I put my hair because it's so powerful.
When I'm packaging up my parcels and I send them off, I'm like making sure none of my hair's fallen in there, because I'm like, what happens if I've sent this and this person just decides I'm going to curse you? I think all the time.
Such witch
I'm trying to make sure I do my parcels in like the most hair-free place ever, just in case the wrong person gets hold of my hair.
Like the power they could have from that hair.
No, you can never trust someone. You don't know what power they possess. Everyone just looks normal on the outside.
I'm so glad it's not just me that feels like this. Hair, nails, all like that, like eyelashes.
Oh, I mean, I'm a polite person anyway, but I even try not to be rude to people, because even I think, what happens if I've just like got on the wrong side of someone on the wrong day?
Yeah, could do anything.
They could do anything.
Have you got a favourite item that you sell in your Etsy shop that you just love doing?
My skulls. I get so attached to them. I do. I just find them so powerful. I just find that they radiate with energy. It's quite funny because I'm a vegetarian. I don't eat meat, but I've got a house full of dead things. But I just find that there's such beauty in like being able to preserve something and to be able to keep this gift alive. Even though it's not with us physically. And there's a lot of stuff that I just find it to be more powerful when it's on bones. I don't know why that is. There is nothing that I have read or have been taught that suggests that. I just find that anything that's carved or painted onto a bone, I just find it to just hold a lot more energy.
Do you find them when you go out walking?
Some of them I have done, yeah. I mean, we live in such a small country that to be able to come across something is quite lucky. You see these people in America and they can go hiking for 3 days and come back with like 8 sets of antlers.
So lucky.
I know, and I have a strange bucket list, but my bucket list is to be able to find some antlers. Just to find even just one, just to stumble across one. But we live in such a small country that if the antlers have been shedded, chances are it's on someone's land and they've already collected them. We don't have large enough spaces for something to not only stay there, but to be left there.
Yeah, I've never found anything either. I do have bones and antlers and stuff, but I've bought them from other witches who either like found them or sourced them from hunters or,
Now, the main person I go to, he's a farmer, so all of his stuff is all ethically sourced. So I try to source things that aren't done through hunting. It's not that I don't believe in hunting. I think it's, if we were to do it the way it should be done, I 100% agree. I love the whole idea of that you're hunting something because you need what it's able to provide, but then you use all aspects of that. I've always found it interesting with even, say, like the Native Americans, these Native Indians, they would use absolutely every part of what they killed because it provided life for them, a way for their community to be able to continue. Whereas this whole hunting for sport, so for that reason, I just try to get everything ethically sourced. And a lot of people want to know where their bones came from. They
Yeah.
want to know. I had a lot of, you probably saw on my Etsy, I had a lot of stuff that was from a fox cub. A lot of the bones on there were from a fox cub, and that was because it sadly got hit by a car and it didn't make it. So the person I get my bones from obviously did what they do and then cleaned them all up. And that's where I find the beauty in it, to be able to preserve that beauty. That it's very sad that that happened, but we'll still be able to honor it even though something tragic happened to it.
It reminds me of a conversation I had on an episode called Beauty and the Macabre. And it was a lady who did taxidermy in Europe. And she was lucky enough to have a job where she could walk next to the railway lines and then find all the
Yeah.
animals, that were hit by the trains. And then she'd bring them home and clean them up and make them into beautiful magical items. And the
Yeah.
whole discussion about, like, when you find something dead, you can take it and give it another lease of life and more respect and, sell it to people who are going to treasure it.
No, I find that you're immortalizing this creature, even though it never knew it, but it was going to live a long life and provide people with so much joy. I find animals to be much more connected spiritually to things than we are, which is why I find that there's a lot more power in what's left of them. They radiate this energy that they had, this connection to the spirits, that we can kind of reach through them.
Have you heard about the Whimsy Goth Market in London? A brand spanking new market for the weird and magical, held at Cecile Sharp House in Camden. A space created where individuality is celebrated and small businesses are supported, where all subcultures can come together, feel safe, welcome and included. For more information on this magical event, visit www.thewhimsygothmarket.uk. For those who are interested in your work, can you give yourself a little plug where we can find you and where we can buy?
Of course. So I'm Runic Crafts. You can find me on Instagram under Runic Crafts, and on Instagram it's under Runic Crafts Studios. There's lots of stuff that you can buy off the shelf, or I'm always happy to do custom and personalized orders. As we said earlier, there's a lot of stuff that I don't want to just put out there with not knowing the knowledge that people have. I don't want to just give them something that they don't quite understand, because I want them to be able to use these crafts correctly. So anything that people want customized, I'm more than happy to have a little conversation and work with people to kind of create something that will be more fitting for them.
And finally, have you got any advice to new witches about how to begin the working with the runes in general? Like, where would they start? What would you advise?
I would advise to get to know them. I found a good thing to do is every day choose a rune and learn its name and its basic meaning. And if you do that through the set, however many times, you're going to eventually remember them. Otherwise, you're going to overload yourself with every single letter, every single meaning, trying to do it all at once. If you just focus one at a time, and then when you feel more comfortable, you will be able to understand them a lot more. And a good thing to do as well is, once you feel more comfortable with them, is start reading with them and just sit there pick one out, read what it has to offer.
I always think with witchcraft, you're always learning. You never stop learning with anything, really, Tara.
100%.
So don't get bogged down and overwhelmed that there's just so much to
I'll
learn.
never get overwhelmed. Every time I thought I knew what I was doing, I would find a rabbit hole which made me feel like I knew nothing. But that's the journey. That's what excites us, to continue to learn, to continue to find out more information. For anyone, I suppose, looking into learning runic magic, there's a few things that you can do. You can do what we call, say, you can find a runic master, and this would either be something that you choose or they choose you. If they choose you, you'll see signs manifesting into your visions or your day-to-day life. And if you haven't found one, you can find a quiet place and use a simple divination method, which just allows you to find your teacher. Here you have different teachers. You've got Odin being the main one, and then we won't go into all the depths of others because then we just end up going through different laws. But yeah, and you don't even have to have a runic master. You can just simply let the runes guide you. Sit there with them. I always found it really handy to have my pouch of runes and keep them for me. So I've got a pouch of runes which are only mine. I'll only use them on myself. They'll stay with me, only I've touched them. They're my runes. Very precious. They're my runes. They were given to me by this green witch years ago. I find when someone gives you something that's so much more powerful than if you were to buy it yourself. I don't know why I feel that way. I just feel like it's more meaningful if someone was to give you them than to just buy them. So I do feel really connected to these runes. They're not even the best runes. They're like worn, half painted on, but I just feel really connected to them. I've had them for so long.
And I suppose people could also make their own.
Yeah, if you can't, I mean, like I said, you don't even have to go all out, even if you can only do a piece of paper cut up into squares with runes on. But I've seen some fantastic set of runes and I think I want them, but I don't need to spend that much on them. Maybe just yet. At some point in the future, probably.
Hang on, don't you create runestones?
I do, but then I always see, like, I've seen some recently. What is it? They're made out of jade.
Oh, nice.
I know, and I'm like, oh, they're just so lovely.
Proper sexy runes.
Yeah. Yeah, it's like I've got a set of rune dice at the moment, which you've probably seen is my newest one that I've done on the Etsy. You can either buy them on their own or in a box. I just find the dice so much easier if you just want to throw them, because then you're not throwing 20 or more runes and then they scatter everywhere and you can't find them. At least with the dice, a rune set fit perfectly on 4 dice. That I just find them much more pleasant. Then you're only having to read 4 runes. You're not trying to scavenge around, find where all these little tiny stones have flown off to.
And you sell them as well. Plug in, yeah, just plug in. You have been listening to the Bell Witch podcast, created with love and magic by me, Swales, the friendly green witch. Big thank you to my lovely guest for this episode. And thank you to you, dear listener, for choosing the Bell Witch podcast to fill your ears. If you have a witch business, an independent podcast, a witchy topic you'd like me to talk about, or a trailer you'd like me to play, reach me on the Bell Witch podcast at yahoo.com. I love to hear from you and I love to support you. And I love to celebrate other witch businesses because there indeed is magic in sharing audiences amongst podcasts and other spiritual businesses. If you would like to show the Bell Witch podcast some love, you can leave ratings and reviews wherever you listen to your podcasts, as those stars really do help the show to shine. Join the Bell Witch podcast on Patreon for bonus content, early access and behind the scene videos. Until next time, stay magical, witches.